Welcome to Live from my office. Man, am I glad you're here. It's been a very busy time here at the Live from my offices, and that's because if you hadn't heard, I'm back on the radio on the legendary Big 890 WLS. I'm doing the morning show every day between 5:30 and 9, and I hope you'll listen. Now, many of you are saying, what is this radio you speak of? Radio is something that was very, very popular in this country for many, many, many years. And my job is to make it popular again, at least the WLS morning show. And I think we can do it because the podcast is a hit. Why wouldn't the show on the radio be a hit? And who knows, maybe we do Live from my office on ice, but only with your support. And it's appreciated always on whatever platform you're listening. Subscribe, rate, review. It all matters. And give the radio show a listen if you haven't already. What we attempt to do on Wednesdays here is to bring you some highlights from the radio show. So in case you didn't hear some of the interviews we did there, we can bring them to you here, and you'll get a snippet of what's happening on the radio. And the same goes in the opposite direction as well. These first couple of weeks of the show have been busy enough where we're playing more highlights from WLS than we might normally do. But we'll get back to regular original Monday podcast shows starting as soon as next Monday. That's the tentative date, but certainly the Monday after the 4th of July, which would be the 11th. All right, so that's what's coming up. I hope that plan makes sense because, as you might be able to hear from the tone of my voice, I'm largely making it up as I go along. David Hochberg and Team Hochberg are our title sponsors here at Live from my office. And we also have a big thanks to Cantini Golf. Terry Hanley and crew out at Cantini. We'll have another Matt Tuller, the pro, golf lesson, a way for you to think about how you play the game coming up as well. But on today's show, as I mentioned, the Steve Cochran Show radio highlights from WLS, Joe Walsh, the former congressman, a reformed Republican. He has his own podcast that I think you ought to give a listen to. It's a cool concept. We'll talk about it. And in addition to that, we'll talk about the January 6th hearings that are going on. Plus, I don't want Ukraine to be on the back burner any more than you do. It's understandable, human nature, news cycles being what they are, that's difficult to achieve. But we've got a couple of Chicago area doctors who are working on making sure the training of the doctors in Ukraine is up to speed so they can take care of really the horror they're seeing all the time at the hands of the lunatic Vladimir Putin. Really cool charity to tell you about as well. It all gets underway next when we start this episode of the Steve Cochran Show WLS highlights on this episode of Live from my office. I can't thank David Hochberg enough for the continued support of Live from my office as our title sponsor. And the David Hochberg words of the day are credit utilization. Ooh, what's credit utilization? I don't know, but he knows. Actually, I do know. Credit utilization is the amount of credit debt you have out there and how you're using it and how you're paying it down. Now, that's as basic a definition as I can give you because I looked it up a few minutes ago, and that seems right. David Hochberg knows all the terms related to your credit score and making sure your credit rating is great to make sure you get the best terms whenever you go ahead and do a loan of any kind. He's got the experts. He's got a guy. He's got several guys and ladies, too, and they're all teed up to help you. David Hochberg and Team Hochberg can save you money in so many ways, but you have to ask for the help, and they will step up and give it to you. 855-56-DAVID, 56david.com. Remember, credit utilization. It matters.
The morning show worth waking up for. The Steve Cochran Show on 890 WLS.
606, thank you for listening. Don't forget there's a podcast called Live from my office that I'm fond of because I host it. And get it wherever you get your podcast. If you miss something on the show, you can get podcast highlights at, I should know the website, WLS-AM.com?
Sure. 890?
WLS-AM.com.
Yeah, I'm filling in.
And you abstain from any responsibility for information. And Live from my office is, we're also running some highlights from the show.
WLS-AM.com.
All right, cool. As long as we're clear. I'll tell you who else does a great podcast.
Oh,
It's my old friend Joe Walsh.
Great podcast.
Yeah, and by old friend, I mean we've been friends a long time. Not that he's that old. He's not a kid anymore, but he looks pretty good for an old guy. Nah, he's old. So, Joe, do we have Joe? We got him? Hey, Joe, how are you, man?
Stevie, it's so awesome to be with. I was letting you do your thing, shoot me down, and then because I know you'll build me back up.
Well, I'm just bitter because we're about the same age, and you're handsome with a full head of hair, and I'm bitter about that. I'm not going to lie.
You're a better golfer, and you're better on the radio.
Well, it's all a big trade-off. I loved what you did on the radio until radio threw you out, and I still think there's another day for you, and you should be because you're a tremendous talk show host. But in the meantime, tell people about this podcast you do.
I did a great job the last 12 years, Steve, of helping to divide this country. So I launched a podcast called White Flag with Joe Walsh a few months ago. Every week I sit down with somebody who I disagree with, and we try to find some common ground on issues. So I'm trying to do something about that divide that the young, crazy Tea Party guy, me, was responsible for.
Well, you were part of the deal, but I told Jane this just a few minutes ago off the air. So one of the things I respect most about you is when you felt like you had become part of the problem, not the solution, you called yourself out on it and changed your path, much to your own economic destruction in the short term, but in the meantime, doing something more important. And frankly, that's what we're trying to do with this show.
Hey, Steve, I love the fact that you're back on the radio. I'm going to say this, and you didn't tell me to say this. I think you're wonderful on the radio, and you are an honest voice. And I will say this. There are so frickin' many dishonest voices in talk radio, especially in conservative talk radio in this era of Trump. They all got to get down on their frickin' knees and bow and worship Trump every day because that's where the ratings are. Mm-hmm. You speak your truth, and by God, Chicago is lucky to have you.
Well, it's nice of you to say. I will say this: the
man crush. I got a man crush on Steve Cochran.
Get over her, you get over. I will say this though: the and you know my sermon. I've given it to you a million times. The far right and the far left are the problem. The far left doesn't get a pass on this. The far left is, and you know this deal.
Yeah.
Did Joe? Anytime you would criticize either President Trump or criticize anybody on the Republican side, you're a left wing.
Yes.
P word. But also anytime you would take any opinion that might be reflective of traditional conservative views, you're a right-wing nut job. So people hear what they want to hear. What we need to do is activate this giant chunk of people in the middle, not to give up, but to be involved and to vote your beliefs and your conscience. And the thing is, Joe, you've been a Republican your whole life until all of this. The Republican Party principles, the Lincoln Republican Party principles, traditional conservatives, those are incredibly important values. And I want to see real Republicans stand up and fight for them and not just genuflect to the guy in the fur hat and the horns.
It may not happen, Steve, in our lifetime. I mean that. I don't. This Republican Party now is what it is. I mean, yeah, I believe I was a Republican my whole life until 2 years ago, until I ended my Mission Impossible primary challenge to Donald Trump. I believe in freedom, free markets, free trade, and opportunity. That Republican Party is dead. This is all the difference between the far right and the far left now. And you're right, they're both divisive, and we got to come together. There's a cultish aspect in the far right that I've never seen in my lifetime. I mean, I remember when Reagan was president, George W. Bush was president, you could criticize those guys as a Republican. You criticize Donald Trump right now as a Republican, you're done. Look what Liz Cheney is doing. Look what my former friend and colleague Adam Kinzinger is doing. Simply speaking the truth. And let's be real, Steve, they're done as Republicans. Right now, they're done. I was done 2 years ago.
But aren't traditional Republicans speaking their mind for the greater good that they believe in? Aren't they done specifically because the fringes are the ones that show up? I mean, I bring this all back to the primary that we've got next Tuesday in the primary system we live under. The far right and the far left show up, the middle doesn't. So therefore, the far right and the far left control everything. And if you're going to allow the far right and the far left to control everything, you're not going to get any change.
Yeah, but I think you're right, Steve, but I think it's moved beyond the far right in the Republican Party. I'm more familiar with it than the far left. It's now much more mainstream. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a frickin' nut job.
Yes, yes.
But
100%.
But there are, Senator Tim Scott, a guy I served with, South Carolina yesterday came out and said, I haven't watched any of these hearings. I don't care about what happened on January 6th. And if Trump runs in 24, I'm supporting him again. That's no Marjorie Taylor Greene crazy. That's Tim Scott, mainstream Republican. But he has to say that, Steve, or he won't get reelected.
I just, I've talked to you about this before. At one point, I'm with Joe, and I said, seriously, explain something to me. What is so great? And you've done this, you've explained it to me. But for the sake of this conversation, I said, Joe, explain something to me. What is so great about this job that you're willing to sell yourself out and say whatever it is to keep the job and forget everything about the idealistic vision of why you should be there? And you made the point. You go, look, pretty good job.
Oh, Steve,
pretty good job, pretty good perks, pretty good things going on. But you still have to face your husband or your wife, your sons and your daughters, your family, and tell them why you've sold out.
You can justify any and all of that. Steve, in the 5 years that I've been out of the closet against Trump, I've had almost every one of my former colleagues tell me privately they feel the same way about Trump. They just can't say it. So they've all sold their soul. Why? Because it's so awesome being a congressman or a senator. You have such power. It is a great, great gig. And all you want to do is get reelected. And you can justify and make excuses for everything else because you don't want to let go of that great gig. It's sad. But Steve, same thing in the radio biz. There are so many radio people who don't say what they really believe because they feed their audience a bunch of BS, to keep them listening.
Well, I did. Look, I got fired twice from the car wash.
Yes.
Which for a lot of people, that would have been the last job you ever wanted because I could not do what I wasn't. I would not do what I wasn't. And Amen. I spoke up again and again because I would have made myself physically ill.
And by the way, amen, and everybody listening to us right now, and everybody in Chicago and around the country should be listening to Steve Cochran every freaking morning. Steve, this is what you do. And audience, this is what you're going to get. Cochran is going to give you the no bull, his take, his truth. He's going to go after the extremes on both sides. My God, listen to this.
Right.
Listen to him.
But that's the point, right? It always comes down to me to three words. To what end? Okay, you want to hold your breath till the other side turns your color? You want to just stomp your feet? You want to throw a tantrum? 50% of the country is always going to believe differently than your most fervent beliefs if you're political. So how does anything get done? And why are you paying people $175,000 plus bennies a whack to do nothing? So you can win an argument at your barbecue?
And Steve Cochran, you just said something really cool at the beginning. There are all these people, Americans, most Americans who are not far right or far left. Man, they got to listen and they got to become activated because right now, they're not part of the Trumpist party or the far left party. There ought to be a new party for them.
Joe Walsh's podcast is called White Flag, somebody with a point of view, an argument, a philosophy that Joe doesn't necessarily agree with, and they try to find some common ground. That's the way it's supposed to be done. Texture says, talk about 2,000 mules. Joe Walsh sucks, and you suck, too. And then there's the a-hole word and some others in here, which really, frankly, I got to tell you, doesn't win the argument. 2,000 Mules is a movie done by Dinesh D'Souza, who is a grifter and has been proven to be such, and all the arguments have been vetted. The January 6 hearings, Joe, as they've gone on, have been incredibly depressing to watch, because you get a bigger and bigger picture of what went down and how close we came to the edge. And my wife brought up a great point yesterday. It said, okay, let's say you truly believe the election was funky, that there was something bad about it, that there needs to be more investigation. You're entitled to that belief. But 60 out of 61 lawsuits that were either dismissed or went away because there was no evidence presented, all of that has to matter. And even if that doesn't matter, do you support the violence that went on in the Capitol, where because of that 5 cops died? I mean, that's not Republican. That's not American.
The biggest sore loser in American history. I mean, and when it comes right down to it, Steve, think about that. For the first time in American history in 2020, a sitting American president lost an election, refused to concede, refused to participate in the peaceful transfer of power, and then on top of all of that, he purposely tried to overturn the election. Never been done, probably never will be done again. Look, I call Trump a traitor. I think he is. I call him a pathological liar. He is. But you know what? He's a big sore loser. Steve Cochran, he's everything we taught our children not to do. Be gracious, congratulate the winner. It's madness. That's why we're here.
And by the way, I've never seen a guy who is more self-destructive, because you could make an argument for several things that were accomplished on his watch, whether they were his idea or not, that were positive for the country. And all of that gets washed away because it's all about, well, how am I going to get attention today? Donald Trump wakes up in the morning and wants to know how he's going to get attention today.
And Stevie, it's his party. He wants attention. He'll probably come out in a month and announce he's running for re-election because he needs that limelight.
And the amount of money and time that's been wasted on all of this when we know you don't like that Biden was elected? That's your right as an American. Congratulations. I am very disappointed in many things that have happened with the Biden administration, but he's the president, and I certainly hope he can turn it around. But in the meantime, none of this violence and none of this, I hate you because you have an opinion different than mine, none of that makes sense. Even you people calling us a-holes, and you're like, I don't hate you guys.
They're listening, Steve. They're listening. And by the way, the thesis of my podcast is I don't think we're as divided as people think. And I think the media and social media, I think, facilitate the divisiveness.
I'm going to jump in on your coffee date here. Joe, love the podcast.
Thank you.
You brought it up. You're trying to find the common ground. When you're booking your guests, is there a favorite person that you didn't want or you didn't think was going to be your favorite because you couldn't find any common ground? Because you've interviewed a lot of people, and there's got to be people there that you just wanted to punch in the neck.
Yes, there have been a few. I'll tell you, one of the first people I interviewed, sat down with, was D.L. Hughley, comedian, entertainer. Yeah. And he despised me a few years ago. And we still I thought we were going to really get into a verbal fist fight. But man, he and I found common ground. I sat down with Rick Santorum, and I was pulling my hair out because he was saying he was saying the truth about Donald Trump, the truth finally. But then he said, and if Trump runs in 2024, I'm still going to support him. So I was pulling my hair out on that one. But every week it's something different. It's fascinating.
You have to hold the president of the United States to a higher standard. I don't know how we lost that message. You only get one. You only get one at a time. And you're not the president of the Republicans or the Democrats, and you're certainly not the president of the people that wear the fur hat and the horns.
Keep talking that way, Steve Cochran. I mean it. I'm not being playful. Keep doing what you're doing.
Let me grab a couple of calls here. This is Sonny in Chicago. Sonny, you're on with Joe Walsh.
Yes, again, you seem like you're just going past everything as far as policy. You're talking about the character, or constantly you go back to that. For some reason, you're not understanding. It's the policy you got to vote on, not anything to do with the character or how they look or how they, how crazy they may seem to you, but the policy at hand of what we're voting for.
Well, you know what?
Situation right now.
Sonny, thanks for the call and thanks for listening. I wish it was that way, Sonny, but that's not reality.
And it's not, and Sonny, it's not character. It's our damn democracy. Trump tried to tear down our democracy. He wouldn't accept the peaceful transfer of power. He wouldn't accept the will of the people. That's our freaking democracy. Come on, Sonny.
You got to fight for it.
Yes.
And I don't mean breaking windows and watch and beating up cops with American flags. You got to fight for what matters. And what matters is the system that we have that's made this the greatest country on earth. And you have to have Democrats and Republicans because those are the two parties we have. But the far right and the far left make it all worse. Just do.
It's like
for now, Steve.
Jay in Michigan, what do you got?
Hey, how are you, Steve?
Good,
how
man.
are you, Joe?
Hey, Jay.
Now, I think calm discourse is the call of the day, and I like to see you guys handling it. Joe, I'd say the last call you got a little excited. Let's keep it
I went
calm,
over.
right?
I need more coffee. More coffee. My bad.
That's all. And listen, and I think what we're missing here is this, guys. Nobody likes a guy who buys a golden toilet. No one really liked Donald Trump, even when he won, right? Here's the real issue, guys. Everybody dislikes politicians so much that they're willing to put a guy like that in office. And if you watch and you see the way things are going, if they continue to govern as well as they're doing, we will get another person who's smart enough to have a golden toilet in their house.
You know what, Jay? You're not wrong. You're
he's not wrong at all, Jay. Spot on, Jay.
The golden toilet theory. We may have cracked the code on politics in 2022. We get your podcast everywhere, right?
Yes. Wherever you get your podcast, White Flag with Joe Walsh. You guys are the best. Steve Cochran, I'm your biggest fan.
I got to be honest with you. I haven't been able to play a whole lot of golf in this 2022 season between the podcast and now getting back on the radio. But I'm hoping to play more. And you know this if you know anything about me. The place I love to play is Cantini Golf. Cantini Golf in Wheaton. It's one of the best you can play in all of Illinois. Recognized by the Kemper Sports Company with multiple awards this time around for being as great as they are. Kemper manages some of the finest facilities in the country. And Cantini is right there with the big boys. So you need to play it. That's the bottom line. If you love golf, you need to play it. 3 grade nines, 27 great holes, tremendous practice facility as well, and a staff that loves to take care of you. And if you can tell me another golf course where that's true, I'd love to know what it is. But Terry Hanley and his crew get it right at Cantini. The head pro is Matt Tuller, and I sat down with Matt. What I like about Matt is he's given us different ways to think our way around the golf course. One of the questions I asked him when we sat down is, should the average golfer like you and me, should we even have a driver in the bag? Should we have a 3-wood in the bag?
That's a good question. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think so. I mean, it's one of those clubs that, for me personally, I find is more accurate off the tee than my driver. I know we're not supposed to be talking about the driver, but it is the club that I'm able to find the fairway with more off of the tee box. I find that people actually get in more trouble on the par 5s trying to get home into with their 3-wood when they might duff it. So to me, it's finding that right club off the tee that's going to get you more accuracy, which can be that 3-wood. And
that's what you need to do then. Take that 3-wood out of your bag, hit it off the tee more often, and see if your score drops. Thanks to Matt Tuller, head pro at CantiniGolf.com. At CANTIGNY, CantiniGolf.com, 630-260-8197. At 8:06, about to join us now, Dr. Zahir Salul and Dr. Judah Slavkovsky. They know what's happening in Ukraine because from the perspective of medicine, they've seen it, they've been there multiple times, and they're dealing with it every day. You got to remember, Kyiv is it's very similar in size to Chicago. Mm-hmm. And in early 2022, February, people got up, they went to work. They certainly knew there was a threat from Russia.
Bustling city.
But they had lives.
Yeah.
Kids go to school, kids come home. I go to work, you go to work. We have a family, we have a life.
Drive a car here, pack a lunch.
There is none of that now.
Nothing.
You know,
Unbelievable.
The far western areas and along the Balkans, there's still life in Ukraine where people are doing it to the best of their ability. But we can't forget about Ukraine and what's happening here. And that's why I wanted to invite both doctors on. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. Good morning, Steve.
Let me start with you, Dr. Judah. Can I call you Judah? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Let me start with you, Judah. Tell me how many times you've been over.
I've been over there twice.
And when you go over, you end up going to camps or to hospitals, or where does someone like you go?
Yeah, we've been working directly with hospitals identified primarily by the Ministry of Health that are in need of some sort of education.
So since you're a surgeon, and tell everybody where you're a surgeon?
I'm a surgeon at the U of I in Champaign-Urbana.
Okay, so do you immediately go into ER surgery mode when you're there because you're seeing active injuries?
Most of the active injuries are being dealt with by Ukrainian surgeons themselves, who by and large are well trained. What we found, though, is that many of these surgeons don't have a broad trauma exposure prior to the war, and of course now they're seeing that. So much of our work has been educating our surgical colleagues there in terms of various trauma techniques and triage techniques to deal with the war wounded that they're seeing now.
I hadn't even thought of that, but training them up as fast as they can so they can deal with what they see. Of course, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Dr. Salul is the president of Med Global and Pulmonary and Critical Care Associate Professor at UIC. And Dr. Salul, give me your background as well. How many times have you made that trip?
I've been in Ukraine twice, and actually we're gearing up to send our fourth team. Dr. Judah will be joining another trauma surgeons and the critical care specialist at the end of this month. My focus with the critical care specialists that joined us in the first couple of missions was to prepare emergency room physicians and critical care specialists in Ukraine on chemical weapon preparedness. They were anxious that the Russians would be using chemical weapons, and also on using portable ultrasound, which is a device that can be handheld on management of trauma patients.
So you're both human beings with families and people that love you here. You go over there, you're doing an amazing thing, but is it difficult to get in the mode of doing the job you've trained for and do so well, knowing that Russia, and particularly Putin, has shown no respect for international rule of law and things like bombing hospitals?
Maybe I can start, but the WHO so far counted more than 240 healthcare centers bombed and targeted by Russia in Ukraine. We've seen this in Syria, where the Russians target especially healthcare providers and hospitals. But I think in our situation, everyone who is able to help should help. Our organization provides the healthcare in disaster regions, including Colombia, Bangladesh, Syria, Yemen, and other places that has disasters or large displacement of population. And we feel that we can, stand in solidarity with our Ukrainian brothers and sisters by providing training, medical supplies. We took with us about more than $1 million worth of medical supplies in the last 3 missions we had, and also some skills that we gained through our work in other disaster regions. So this is our duty and responsibility.
Yeah, and you guys are working with an organization called Med Global, a humanitarian and health non-government organization helping provide health care. Once you work with a patient, you do the surgery, and you get them back to health, what happens? Are you able to get them out of the country and to safety?
Judah, you want to respond to this? From my perspective, we help doctors and nurses to get skills so that way they can deal with the overwhelming situation they face in every hospital.
Sure, but the system is set up where there is a process where you're training doctors up, but you see what you see in the hospitals. Are the people that are medically taken care of sent, to Poland or wherever? I mean, is there a system to get them out of country to make sure they stay healthy?
So in general, of course, most of the wounding and injuries and destruction is occurring in the east and in the south of the country. And there is generally a flow of patients across the country moving from east to west, not dissimilar to our systems of medical evacuation within our military, that patients go from areas close to the front where they receive their initial stabilization to areas of higher specialization where more complex wounds are able to be dealt with, more remote from the field. And of course, there's a great plurality to the amount of wounding that is occurring. Some people with relatively minor wounds are moving on with their lives pretty directly, not unlike trauma patients here in the United States that come into the ER, get fixed up, and then are able to go home. Very complex wounds, and for example, we talked with and other things that are fairly complex to do in a country in war. For example, pediatric patients with large tumors, with cancer problems, with renal failure who require dialysis. There are sizable amounts of these patients that are being moved outside of the country so that they can get the care that they need in order to continue living their lives and thrive.
And Dr. Salul, what do you want people here who have gotten on with their lives? They're not, they're not bad folks. None of them are. They're just busy and they've gotten on with their lives and the news cycle has moved on. What do you want them to know this morning?
The war is still going on. It's actually worse in the east, north, east, and and southeast. You have large number of people who are displaced every day. Many people are losing their houses. Children and civilians are suffering. Many of them are not able to get the basic health care, like medications for hypertension, diabetes. Yesterday, there was this report of patients with diabetes who are not able to get insulin in the city of Kherson. So the situation is catastrophic. The United Nations estimated that 16 million Ukrainians are in need for humanitarian assistance. 10 million are displaced internally. 5 million are refugees in neighboring countries. We still need to pay attention to the Ukrainian victims of the Russian aggression. And anything that we can do to provide help, whether by advocating on their behalf or sending donations to organizations like MedGlobal that is providing healthcare, and many other organizations, should be done. Our attention span is short, unfortunately, because things are fast-paced, but we have to pay attention to the victims of disasters, and whether they are in Afghanistan or Syria or Ukraine.
To charitably help through MedGlobal, what's that website?
www.medglobal.org.
Medglobal.org. And I have a number of fully vetted Ukrainian charitable organizations helping on the ground in a number of different ways. If you go to the Live from My Office feed at CochranShow.com, you can just scroll through there, and we've been focusing on that. There's a charity in every episode that's brought up, but we've been focusing on that heavily. Anyway, I appreciate your time. You're both heroic, and thank you for the work you've done and continue to do, and prayers to everyone there, and we're going to try to keep it front burner here.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks. Thank you,
guys.
doctors. There you go.
Wow. And that doesn't bring it back, right?
You know, it's one of those things, right, where you wake up, you're complaining about this, you're complaining about that. Everybody's got something to complain about. But the people of Ukraine and the people of Yemen, which we've never been focused on.
Never.
Just living the lives they're living, trying to survive.
Right.
And get through another day. It's incredible.
And I'm worried about getting up at 3:30. You know, I think about this too, and what can we do? And Steve, I'm glad that you have on your podcast page a list of other ways to help, because can we help the refugees? Can we adopt an orphan? Like, can we help? Or, foster.
Well, that's the thing. We've got.
What do we do?
We've got to get our immigration situation figured out. We just do. If you're purchasing a new home, refinancing your existing home, securing a VA loan, or a reverse mortgage, you need to do what I did. You need to call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Meet Tony, who posted a 5-star Google review after working with Team Hochberg loan officer Mark Zenner. What a great lender. I heard David Hochberg giving great advice on several stations. It sounded too good to be true. Well, his team is amazing. A big shout out to Mark Zenner, who is very responsive and makes it happen. Thank you, Team Hochberg. I'm telling everyone about my great experience. If that review is not enough to convince you, there's about 400 5-star reviews. And you go to Google and enter Team Hochberg in the browser, and you'll see the reviews pop up. Just scroll through a few of those and see if you're going to be in business with the right people. You are. If you're in need of a mortgage and would like to experience the same 5-star treatment, Tony has it. I've had it. My family's had it. Thousands of other Live from My Office listeners and WLS listeners have enjoyed the same. Next time a friend, a family member asks, you tell them Team Hochberg is a team for you. 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. That's 855-563-2843 or 56david.com for lower.com. An equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. And again, thank you for the amazing work being done by the good doctors, Drs. Salul and Drs. Slakovsky, and their regular trips that they have made to Ukraine. Let's keep the story alive. Let's make sure people keep talking about it. And if you'd like to make a charitable contribution to help their effort, medglobal.org is a great place to go. medglobal.org. Speaking of charities, another one came up on the Steve Cochran radio show on WLS on the Big 890. Mornings 5:30 to 9. And one of the things I pride myself in is making sure that we give voice to charitable causes everywhere we find them. And this is a cause and a charity that was brought to my attention by Jane Klaus, who was filling in on the show, sitting in with the band. Young woman's name is Jen Rubino, and Jen founded an organization called Cards for Hospitalized Kids. Where'd this come from? Well, she was 11 years old, and she was training to be a championship gymnast, very competitive gymnast at that point, was training 6 days a week, and she wasn't feeling great. Went to a doctor after experiencing pain. She thought it was from an injury. However, her life changed instantly when she was diagnosed with a connective tissue and bone disease that's relatively rare and ended her gymnastic career. 20-plus surgeries later, she's seen plenty of hospitals and plenty of hospital care. But one thing that struck her as a little kid and as she grew into a young woman was the fact that you can get pretty lonely in the hospitals, even with your family and loved ones around. And she started Cards for Hospitalized Kids because it meant so much to her when people heard about her story that she got cards in the hospital. So the website is just that. We link it in the show notes. It's cardsforhospitalizedkids.com, cards with an S for hospitalizedkids.com, and it'll tell you how you can get, your Girl Scout troop together, your Boy Scouts, your kids, your grandkids, your family, people at work, get them together, make some cards for kids and have them sent out. Obviously, it's a big draw over the holidays, but generally, year-round, the cards are needed as well. And because of Jen Rubino's story, she's been able to generate a lot of interest, including a lot of interest from some of the most recognized names in gymnastics in particular. And there are a bunch of celebrities supporting her as well, like Taylor Swift and Lady Gaga. And more, Juliana and Bill Rancic, that's great people, friends of mine. But how about Nastasia Lukin, Allie Raisman, Shannon Miller? These are all medal-winning gymnasts. Dominique Moceanu, all gymnasts who stepped up for this gymnast that they were inspired by, who's doing this for hospitalized kids now. So good for Jen Rubino, and she would love your help, and I would love if you help as well, and you can make it a fun family project. cardsforhospitalizedkids.com. My name is Steve Cochran. His name is Ross Cochran. He's the guy that produces this show and gets it on the podcast world and every platform that is out there. I believe we're living there, and I hope you'll tell your friends to listen to the podcast, and I hope you'll try the radio show. And please tell your friends to listen to the radio show as well. There's stuff we can do on the radio we can't do here. There's stuff we can do on the podcast we can't do there. It's a multi-platform world, and we're just living in it. Thank you for listening. Thank you to David Hochberg and Team Hochberg, to Matt Tuller and everybody at Cantini Golf. Get out there on a golf course. You deserve it. And we'll see you every weekday morning at 5:30 on 890 WLS. And we'll see you back here next time when we do the Deep Six with my friend Patty Steele from WCBS FM in New York. This is Live from My Office.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Support the show by subscribing wherever you're listening and by telling your friends about it. Follow Steve on all social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And make sure you check out this episode's show notes for relevant information discussed during the conversations. You can also email the show directly at thecochranshow@gmail.com with any questions or comments. And that's the best place to tell us about your favorite nonprofit so we can make sure we mention them on the next episode. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event. And occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.